Yeah.
Good afternoon. We have a quorum today with Mr. Davalos, Ms. Miles, and myself, and we will start with our finance workshop.
All right, guys, so last week we went over last month, like funding. So this is gonna be some of the same. So I may just skip over some slides, but stop me if you have questions.
Okay.
And further on the agenda is action on our budget, because our budget is due a week from today. As of about 30 minutes ago, we still don't have numbers. We do have a unit value. In a year ago, we could, calculate that, but they changed the funding formulas. So we're waiting for Pen for those numbers. So what, in the past, you two will remember, depending again on how close we are to how early our budgets are due. When we have more time, you get the whole printout of actually what's uploaded, everything, the lines. You're not going to have that because I haven't even been able to start that because the system is not ready to our budget yet. So, but what you're going to get, because we can calculate, estimate, big, give us some leeway because of the new funding formula. But we have an idea of what we're going to be. So we'll get started. We went over this just in our 40-day. I just want to go straight into revenue. A big part of our revenue is our operational reserve. It used to be called cash carryover. We try to use the new term to, because it is a reserve, it's not really good. Right. And again, back in the days when we were rated for our bonds with Moody's, they expected we had to have a policy that we would have at least a whatever cash reserve. And I think in those days we set it at 12%. Like today, I think, we have some empty staff positions. I think we're going to end up around 15, possibly more percent for next year. I'm going to jump into the funding formula. That's what it looks like now. That's a really good picture of it. It takes it to place each portion of it. So we're going to look at a few things. Remember, everything depends on how many kids we have, and you'll hear the word MIM at your workshops too. People talk about MIM, and we'll report that MIM on the 40th, 80th, and 120th day. They're going to use the average of our 80th and 120th for the subsequent year's budget. This chart just kind of shows you where our membership has been since the past. It's like 2015. And we are going down this year. We're short 42, 44 kids. So that hurts. Right here it just kind of shows you last year, 8120, which is what this year's budget is built on. We were at 787 million. This next year, so our FY25 8120 average is at 744. And you have little arrows just kind of comparing the number on the right, either a loss or gain, is comparing more the cohorts, like the kids moving up. So comparing, current year 11th grade numbers to, where we are now. So that just should, in our estimations, using our funding formula, that's almost a $300,000 hit to us, which is never good, but that's what we're here for, are those kids, and that's what generates the money. Our unit value, we were given that last week. It went up almost $250, $247. And, that's always, it's going to keep increasing. There were some years where it stayed flat. Those years when we had no pay raises, we laid off staff, we had some pretty bad years there for a while, but we are increasing each year. So what the formula does, it takes those membership numbers and turns them into units for that unit value. So these are some of the changes that passed in HB 63. I mean, the governor just signed it last week. Within the funding formula, there's going to be a multiplier for our English learner. So it's going to be a 3-year average of students who are reclassified from ELs to fluent English proficient. Lorena gave me numbers today. I think it's like 7.75 or something. That will go into the formula. That's one of the things we don't know how it's going to calculate. Our at-risk index has always been in the formula, but it's changing how they determine that number this year. Before, it was based on Title I numbers, our ELs, and mobility. And so for the 26 budget, had it been calculated with those numbers, our at-risk, and then it's multiplied by a factor, but our at-risk index is at 0.205. They're changing it for next year. Now it's based on average income. Just a side note, there's even funding out there for low income. We don't get it, which it always kind of confuses me because you ask cafeteria, our free and reduced rate is like 80%.
Mm-hmm.
And but when you look at these numbers, and this is what the state sent us, you know, this is 3 years of above average income all the way down to extremely low. So Shelley helped me today. I took those, the low, the very low, and extremely low. It comes to under 70%. But then the reason we have that free and reduced rate of like 80, they multiply it by 1.6, I believe. And whatever that factor is, that does show how we get to that cafeteria free and reduced rate. But based on this, our population, the income is not enough that we receive extra funding for low income. But that's going to go to the formula, giving us a 0.148 at risk. So using that number, it's a decrease for us. But the bill says that we will be held harmless, and I listened to something very recently. That's what I understood too. But then we heard that they're only funding up to $1 million to hold districts harmless. Oh. So we're really confused.
They gave them $4 million to do that, and then only allowed them to spend $1 million of that $4 million in some of the legislation. So we're waiting for some more information on it.
We don't know where we're going to fall. I mean, to me, hold harmless is hold harmless, but I don't know. So that's why we can't do a good estimation of our SEG. The third change of the funding formula is the cost differential in the basic program units, which is how they're weighted. And this just shows you that compares that. You know, we're taking the old, currently the weighting, you can see it's highlighted in yellow, grade 6 through 12. Those, 1.045 and 1.25, which turns 744 kids into 901 units. But with the new cost differential going up to 1.3 for 6th grade on up, it turns those 744 membership into 934 units. So that gets us more funding. Other things in the unit value, and I'll talk quick here unless you have specific questions, because I dig over this and I know a couple of you have heard this for years and it doesn't change, so I hate to bore you, but our membership, our TCI, our teacher cost index, every October we report how many level 1, 2, 3 teachers we have. This year, we dropped quite a bit because we lost 4 level 3 teachers, 3 retired, 1 resigned. And normally we don't replace them with level 3s. So this year we have that funding. And we're going to be fine. They're going to cover, but to come next year, we're going to count level 1 teachers, not those level 3s. So that's why it has gone down. Special ed generates units, fine arts, bilingual. That national board certified, we don't have any on there. We did hear something last week about possibly nurses with an RN might be able to get that national board certified paycheck. Really, it doesn't help us. It increases our funding formula, but that money goes straight to that person. We pay them, but we don't know any details on that either. But maybe it's something the nurse can benefit from.
Or even our teachers, I think that's something. It's a giant process, but there is some groups out there that'll help teachers go through the process, and it's about a $10,000 raise if you're national board certified. So that money just really comes to us as the school, and then we pay it right to the teacher. We don't. So that's something I think as we push towards having some time for those things, that would be important for our teachers to look into.
Yeah.
And there's a cost to our teachers up front, but there are scholarships, reimbursement scholarships available too. So it would really help them in the long run. School size adjustments for play, rural population. Out of school time activities is, a year ago, we didn't have any kids. We weren't reporting our kids, our homeschool, our charter school kids who live in our district who come here and play ball or are in FFA or skills. And it's not a whole lot. It's like, I think comes to $1.15, but hey, it's like $1,000, $2,000 that we might get.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. And it also helps our district because we know which kids are here wearing that Dexter jersey, Revenue, that is just to kind of show you, I know it's probably sometimes confuse you. I talk about operational funds, which is a specific fund, 11,000. But our operating funds is what it takes to operate our school district. It's our operational funds, our transportation to get kids to school, our money to buy textbooks, and our cafeteria. Even though that cafeteria is federal program, that's still part of our operating budget. We have to have those funds for our kids. And that just kind of shows you how much, most of it, of course, is that SEG. And that's a better picture because that shows you, just 99.6% is SEG. We get a little bit of forest reserve money because we have the fish hatchery. And I say a little bit, it's like $1,500. We get some revenue coming in from activities and that's just really an in-district kind of process. We pay a bus driver, but then the Skills USA program pays us for that. So that shows up as revenue. Indirect costs, sometimes called administrative costs, some of our federal grants and our New Mexico pre-K grant. A percentage of those expenditures is paid to operational.
So with that indirect, the New Mexico pre-K, a good way to explain that in my brain is they use electricity, they use water in the school. We're able to take a small part of that grant and go to this indirect cost to pay for the building piece. And it really is, it's very small, but those are the things that.
Okay, every little bit.
Mhm.
So expenditures, of course, is the big thing when we're talking budget every year. So I'll try to, you hear of chart of accounts or UCOA, and you hear us talk about funds and programs and different things like that. So that's just a set of numbers that we use to identify every transaction we make. Fund function objects. We have an extra one in there. Location, because we were doing location before they started requiring it, but then they added their own numbers. So we kind of have something extra in there that we have to filter out when we upload the report. But I'll just go over each one quickly. Our funds, I know we talked about this last month, it's just a good picture of the different types of funds that we have. I think the only pot of money I didn't show was our debt service funds, which is funds that our taxpayers are paying us through their property taxes when they agree to a bond. So there wasn't a pot for that, but I wanted to be sure to include it. And that's the first part of our funding line. These are just more examples of funds that we have, our Title I migrant cafeteria, Perkins, our CTE funding, things like that. Rural low-income schools, we're not getting that anymore, but it's just a sample of the Title I fund. Capital outlay, I know we talked about too. That's how we're building buildings and making repairs to buildings for the most part. Now, we also use operational for maintenance and repairs and to pay our staff. But a lot of it, if we do something big, it's coming out of capital outlay funds. And this year, the court money, direct legislative awards. Friday, the governor did sign the capital outlay money, so we're going to get money for our track, our field house repairs, practice field irrigation systems. So we're really happy about that. Now that we kind of got our feet wet, next year we'll go a lot more prepared and maybe, ask for something a little bigger. So while we're talking about funds, this pie chart just kind of shows You know, that big blue part is our operational fund, the 11,000, or GO, general operations, you'll hear it called. Debt service is big because again, that's the money we're receiving to pay back our loans, our bonds. And then local is our activity funds, our fundraisers, and our gate receipts. And then of course the special federal and state funds. So we'll go back to them. So after the fund comes function. Object is in there, but I'm gonna save it for later. But this slide just talks about our different functions. So if we're spending operational money, we plug in that fund code 11,000, and then we choose our function, whether it's classroom 1,000, or maybe it's a nurse or a counselor, then it's a 2,000 fund. Also within that 2,000 function comes general administration, which is superintendent's office and board. School administration, which is our school principals, secretaries, things like that. And then we have 25 and 26 and 27. 25 is support services like finance office, technology, things that it's not really assigned to a school, it's a central service. And the same for maintenance and custodial. 2,700 function is our student transportation, just to and from. You're not going to see a lot of expenditures in our operational fund for student transportation. You'll see a little bit, but the majority of them are in our specific transportation fund, 13,000. We have food services, capital outlay, and debt service. So again, every expenditure we make has to have these numbers. After the function comes object. I'm going to skip over that for now. And then we have programs, whether it's regular ed or special ed. I understand this coming year, they're going to add one for gifted. We have vocational, so all of our CTE expenditures, whether it's out of operational or the Perkins grant, we use that 3,000 program code. 9,000 is where all of our extracurricular. So athletics, student travel, or battle of the books, or for student council, any of that is in our 9,000 program code. It's still within that big operational umbrella. Now job is at the very location and site are the same thing. Ours was location, then Ted added a specific site. It was going to be just a little bit too. We just decided not. We're still using our own number for some. Be a good way to explain it. So a big part of our budget goes to the elementary to pay for all the teachers and the utilities. You know, everything is coded to that specific location. But the principals have their own discretionary budget, which we have a formula for, and they're giving funding that they get to spend as they see that, you know, if it's for their office supplies or classroom supplies, things like that. So that's what we use our location for. Because we have it, we're using our internal for elementary, but then we've got all those other expenditures that are elementary that don't come out of their budget that we take care of over here. When we're paying salary benefits, so every time, you know, when Nancy runs payroll and you know, Prince County, we have medical, dental, vision, there's a line for every. It depends on what your job is, but if you're a teacher, everything is coded with that 1411. And the reason, you know, this is the state, but also nationally, there's a chart of accounts. So our state has really, they've done a good job because we used to have maybe a very short chart of accounts. So they added all of this, and it's a pain in the neck, but you learn it and you do it. But then our state information flows up to the national level, and that's where they get NCES gets all their reports. So the object, which is in the middle, that's really the big one as far as, you know, when we're looking at, you know, how much is spent on salary and benefits, or how much are we spending on the electric bill, things like that. So that's just a 5-digit code that we use. And the state also has done a good job of categorizing them. You know, utilities in the 5400 series under purchase property services, but then you have PD under professional and technical services. So we have a nice big book if y'all are ever interested in really diving deep in that. That's kind of cool if you're kind of nerdy, I guess, but it all makes sense when you look at it and we're able to see where the funds are going. This pie chart is what this does. The big blue is the salary and benefits. And it's kind of interesting to me, when those POs are coming in for meals for our students or for the bus or for a hotel when they're at state baseball, it's like, I think that's a lot of money we're spending on them. Overall, I mean, it's not a huge, huge part of our budget. It's an important part of our budget because we're taking care of our kids. We're paying for that for them. There was a time in our district when not every activity was furnished by the school.
That's a unique thing in general. Most other schools do not pay for travel for their schools. That activity raises funds to travel for that. And so I think that's
Yeah.
Are you saying like the band makes their own fundraiser
They did
to
at one
pay
time.
to
for
pay
the,
for that. So when my husband was at Roswell High to go to anything, they had to pay for the bus and it cost them $1,500 to take a bus for any activity they went to. So FFA actually paid that here at Dexter for if you're traveling within the state and you're going to a competition, then we pay for the bus and hotel room
The meals.
and the meals for that
restaurant?
bus driver.
Yeah. And
So they have to pay registration.
right.
So the our teams don't have to raise any money towards us
For
for them
travel.
to travel around to the schools.
Yeah.
We try to get that idea across, remind our coaches because it is different in a lot of places. But so when my kid is out there raising funds, I don't want him coming to you and saying, "Hey, would you buy this? Would you buy this turkey and meat and sausage?" Because we're raising funds to go to Judgings, because that's not the case. But don't blame them. They gotta learn, and it's confusing. It's confusing.
They do pay for registrations though for those. So and those can be,
So what they go and say, for example, whenever they, I can't remember a fundraiser right now, but whenever they would sell those magazine things to fundraise for cheer, or it was just so that they could buy extra stuff,
Yes,
not
yes.
because you guys were
Right.
needing that money to pay for
That's a
uniforms
very
or
good example because so let's think of I'm going to use football uniforms. They don't have their names on them. They're inventoried and they're property of the school. So the kids don't get to keep them because the school buys them and they belong to the school. Now, if the football coach wants to give the seniors their jersey, they can get a jersey made with their number and name out of their fundraising money. And then that can go to the kids because the kids have raised this money. But anything the district buys, the district owns.
and then we do have that cycle still where,
As far as
mean, it's-
uniforms.
yes,
Yeah.
and once we have our AD is working on a handbook for all things athletics and activities that will all be printed. And we'll have that available. So that way everybody knows, hey, next, on the odd year, every 7th year, X, Y, and Z happens. And we did kind of do an inventory of that. And for the most part, the groups that are paired together for uniforms, it kind of stays the same. It's about $15,000 a year, no matter what. So football's on a deal by itself because it's the most expensive sport for uniforms. But then cheer and track are maybe
Basketball.
together because they're less expensive, but we spend about that same amount of money for those two groups. So we did look at that.
does it mean basketball, boys and girls basketball, or is it just boys?
I think it's separated. I'd have to pull that up.
Yeah, but it was very specific and we looked at the past charges and all of them were similar in that regard.
So I'm gonna go back to that travel just in case you're ever asked. So we pay everything through the state level of competition. So if someone qualifies for nationals, they are already paying for that. I'm gonna use ag or esports as a good example. So you may see kids going to state conference or state esports who did not qualify. So we split that purchase, the district pays for the room, for everything for the kids that qualify and for the coaches to go. But then their fundraising kicks in to pay for the extra kids.
Listen,
So they have the experience.
Yeah, because some advisors liked it. It was good.
And FFA combines some of those things. They have like leadership opportunities. So, we take a bunch of kids to those, and the leadership opportunity also coincides with 3 or 4 kids who are going to compete. A lot of our middle school stuff happens at that time. So we'll pay for that group that is competing, and then the fund pays for the others to go.
And I guess, just something else that might come up about student travel. So I get questions about the meal allowance. We budget $11 a meal. And I know it doesn't sound, we've had people want us to go to 15, 20. And we thought about it because if I drive through McDonald's, I'm not paying $11, it's going to be more. So we tried something this year and our coaches and sponsors have been so good. We asked them every time they turn in a meal receipt to divide it by the total number of people fed, the bus driver, the coaches, the kids. A lot of times they comp the bus driver, but they divide it. And sometimes it's $6 a meal. Sometimes they just get pizza, or sometimes, they do something really inexpensive. Other times when they're in Albuquerque, they may go sit down at Cheddar's or something. And you're not going to eat for $11 a meal.
The next meal they eat sandwiches from Sam's that they brought in. And so the average price is still below the
nice, good job.
11.
And it's real, it helps us because Debbie Richardson she's not double checking, and it helps the coach because they see that, it would help me because, you're right. You're running the credit card for $400 and you're thinking, holy cow, so that has really helped. And I think also it's going to help us keep it where it is. And we give coaches and sponsors some guidelines. It's like, their meals that we're buying are like a burger, Coke, and a fries. We're not going to buy a burger, a Coke, a milkshake, and a lemonade. Just keep it basic. And the kids and the coaches they're really good. Every once in a while they're not, and we just mention it, and Melissa helps us there a lot. But that very seldom does that happen. So they do a really good job. Sorry, back to this. You can see that salaries is what eats up our budget. It's people because that's what we need to educate our kids. So part of our budget is our salary schedule. And you have a copy of those and I can open them up if need be. They're drafts. But we have to send those in with our budget. And this is the list of schedules that go in. We have one called hourly daily that is just for us so that we're consistent. It's not a head, anything to do with head. It's saying, we're going to pay our subs $16 an hour. We're going to pay bus and service hours, just so that we're consistent. In the summer, if Title I has a training, they pay a $250 stipend, for those teachers to come in. And that hourly daily one you'll see, that's just so we can be consistent.
It also helps, I think, in regards to looking at the different people's pay to understand that, what does that look like for somebody who's on a 210-day contract versus a 237-day contract? Are they comparable in regards to their daily rate? Or is the person who is a 210 making way more money per day? And should they be making that much? Are they a certified person, or do we just cut their contract short and they're making more per day based on what they need to do? That allows us to look at that.
And I'll show you the next page will be the one she's talking about. So this is just, what we play our book and our clock, and tournaments we pay a little bit more, but that tournament fund is paying that. But it helps us, just like I said, keep everyone's consistent that we're paying, so we're paying the same thing. And this is what Molly was just referring to. So from all of our salary schedules, we take that, and the salary schedules are in a different stable group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And this is the very last one.
Okay.
And this doesn't go to Ted. This is just something we do for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very last page.
And it is very helpful. So it just pulls in the very top number on our salary schedule, 0 years experience, just that very first number. and compares it. We break it down, like Molly said, into days and how many hours a day. And what we do is turn them all further the same, into a 7-hour day, so that we can compare apples to apples. Like Molly said, we're not comparing a 210 salary with a 180 salary. And that helps us too with our, I don't know what better, I know there's a better word to use, but kind of like a hierarchy. You know, we have this order of like looking at the hourly rates. There was a bill before the legislature this year to bring paraprofessionals up to a $30,000 minimum, which is fine and well and wonderful if they fund it. But we have to remember how it affects the rest of our salary schedules, because it might throw that paraprofessional up above. It just kind of skews things. So, and it may not. I mean, it's kind of how you view it. But that's just one of the things we look at to see, you know, how does the salary fit? And we have all the salary schedules on there, and it is helpful. And it probably may not make sense to y'all. School salaries are kind of monster unto themselves, but I can sure, if you ever want to talk about it, stop by and I can. Yeah, school salaries are, it's hard to compare apples to apples unless you do something like this. You know, one is our route driver contract is based on a 4-hour day. So we have to kind of turn that into a 7-hour days to actually compare it with the others.
So this is still currently on a 5-day school week. You guys can see, we have ran the numbers on that as well. And in reality, it doesn't change anyone's pay to something I would feel like is unrealistic. Target pay currently is $18 an hour if you go to work at Target. Our beginning professionals, we're going to sit about $18 or $19 an hour at the bottom here. Our sub rate wouldn't change because we get to select that hourly rate, and you know, they just work per hour. But just so you guys kind of have an idea, and if we do get that calendar approved, not tonight obviously, but you'll get a new copy of this with all the changes in the number of days. But this we just left the same for right now, so that way we kind of have an idea of what that looks like.
So you're saying that if we were to go to the 4-day, it's not gonna hurt anybody's.
No, it will. Yeah, we would choose not to. So all we would do is we would change the number of days that they're working. They would still receive on the left column here, whatever their salary currently is. Their days working would just change. So it would change in regards
Do you
to
add the more hours to their day so that
they would receive some, but it's not a significant. So we're still working those kinks out, because you know, working 10-hour days is not appropriate either. But once we have all of that like finalized and thought through, and everybody's been able to look at it, we'll provide this for you guys to still see the same, like how many hours a day are they going to work, and what does that take us up to an hour. And Jeannie and I's biggest concern when we even thought about it was, does that mean that, you know, somebody down here that's currently making $16.71 an hour would make $40 an hour? Because that's a giant jump, and that's something that's probably not appropriate in regards to what we're asking them to do. But in reality, it was mostly between a $2 and $4 an hour raise. So it wasn't anything crazy in regards to, we're just cutting the days down in the number of hours. If we did it on just staying the same, it would be about a $2 to $4 raise. So I felt like that, like it's even a possibility to open that box, because we weren't going to go from a $16 an hour job to a $40 an hour job overnight with just the number of days, if that makes sense.
so instead of adding more hours or more days, you're just gonna bump up their salary?
No, we'll just change the number of days they're working.
Okay.
We'll
So
lower the number of days, if
yeah,
that makes
that
sense.
annual will stay the same.
Yes.
That's what the annual will stay the same. We'll have to adjust depending on the number of days and number of hours worked.
And that's the direct funding from the state, correct? That's why that's getting to stay the same?
No, so this would affect everyone, whether they're paid from the SEG or if they're paid from Title I or IDEA. So, yeah, we can't, I guess you could, but we don't punish someone because, well, gee, you're being paid through Title I, you don't get paid as much.
Yeah.
So it's gonna come from, it'll be the same across the board.
So basically, as long as the minimum requirement of hours, because it used to be days, now it's hours,
Okay,
it's basic.
so with that question, let me just go over, okay.
Yeah.
So currently, and I'll,
Can I interrupt?
yeah, yeah,
There's just-
you better,
I'm just gonna go over one more, and then let's
Right, go
talk
ahead.
calendar, if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Yeah.
Because I'm done. Those are those salary schedules, which you have.
yes,
Um,
what does the changes look like to?
One thing, so this is something I sent our staff, I told them, hey, we're getting a 4% raise, the insurance is going up 9, almost 10%. But it's like, don't freak out, that doesn't mean it's a 6% increase,
Right.
So everyone got a calendar or a calculator to kind of play with their salary, just so to help them understand that. Right here, I think this is my last slide, it's what's changing. And our membership decreased. We have salaries going up, insurance going up, including our risk, our property liability insurance. This coming year, we'll have an unemployment where, what's the word, kind of like self-insurance. We've got to reimburse for last year, $3,200 was paid out in unemployment that we have to pay for next year. We talked about the SEG revisions. And then staffing, some of the discussions we've had is just restructuring IT positions, IDEA, which is our federal SPED. And then the elimination of some positions. And those EAs there. By the restructuring of some our IDEA positions, we're gonna have room and IDEA to
Federal funds.
federal special ed to pay for those instructional assistants that this year we're only paying a portion of because we didn't have to bring the budget. So that's going to help. And then there was a salary in Medicaid that we brought to y'all last year and added to the budget that will not be in there this year. Just some other factors, we're losing our state bilingual, what's left of that because of the South, SEG. We don't have, and I'm not very good at explaining that, but it's gonna be about a $43,000 loss. Molly and Loretta could explain that much better than I. We'll have increases in our related services contracts because they're getting a 4% raise too, and their insurance is going up 2%. However, I know Molly's been working on kind of just an audit, making sure that we have the staff that we need.
Our related services are PT, OT, speech. Those people, ensuring that we actually are funding a full-time position if we're hired them full-time and that. So we're trying to audit down to see how can we get down to the bare minimum of people, not necessarily for bare minimum of service, but if we only are giving you a 50% caseload, ensuring we're not paying you as a full-time person.
Efficiency.
Yes. And then, of course, we'll have utility increases just like we do at home. Although I know we're getting better, like with the electricity and such. We have LED lights that are replacing fluorescent lights, things like that. Some things we've just got to be ready for or just be aware of. Our state mandates the 4%, the 10% raises insurance, and our federal allocations may or may not support that. So if they don't, then we'll have to shift some of that to operational. And just one thing I always worry about, since we're still in those coming out of COVID era, we have people who were placed on Medicaid that might not qualify now. So we just have to be aware that we may have some people pick it up.
So build in a cushion basically for that.
But those are the changes. And again, like I told you earlier, we don't have specific numbers but as soon as we do.
But on the restructuring, just so that way, I think this is always important, is these are positions that already are vacant. Either they've left during this school year or we haven't hired anyone. It's not that one of these positions we're just eliminating in general. We've already had that elimination by a staff member leaving. So if we can combine them with something else or streamline our processes to ensure, like with the IT position, if we take one of our 3 current IT positions away, we'll go to 2 people, streamline our processes and be able to do it with 2 people versus with 3 people. That's what that looks like.
So I've got a question on the raises. If somebody is right at that threshold between getting other services and that throwing them over, if they choose to not get that raise, they don't have an option
We
or
don't, we have to, PPD looks to make sure that everyone has a 4% raise.
I see. So
And
there's-
the governor line item vetoed the
Average.
average word. It was an average 4% raise. So if we needed to, administrators were prepared to not take the 4% raise, to give it to all our other staff first and make it an average that way. However, the governor line item vetoed the word average, so it will be a 4% across the board.
But no, they're not given the option to not take a raise. Yeah, so sometimes,
No, yeah, I've heard, I mean, I've been in positions where employees have asked me, say, hey, I don't want to raise. And in my area, they don't want one, they don't need, you know,
right,
I'm like, okay, that's what you want, that's fine.
Go over the threshold and now
Yes, now, yeah, and I don't
they
know,
have to pick up benefits more than what the
Yes, and I-
district would pay for.
and I don't ask because I can't ask what those benefits are, but if they say, I don't want one, I don't need one, that's fine. Then,
yeah, we don't have that option.
okay,
But that is our overview of where we're going, once we get our numbers, for how we're gonna stick them in. Next step, so once we get numbers, I've got to upload them into the OBMS system. The zero-based budget means that our expenditures have to match our revenue. Even though in the real world, we know we're not gonna, whatever we budget expenditures, we're not gonna spend all of it. Because we need that reserve to carry over. But as far as budget, that's what we do.
And not to carry over for any reason in general. Really, Jeannie explained this well to me, because we have to typically pay some of those pay July salaries out of pocket per se, and that's what that funding does, allows us to pay it before the state kicks in the reimbursement side of that. It allows us to continue to pay all our bills while we await.
And to cover those federal bills that we paid that we haven't been reimbursed. Now, I've got to say though, PED really has improved in the last 3 years. They're getting us our reimbursements for the most part. I mean, we're tickled about that. But regardless, we spend money out till the end of June. So we're not going to receive that money before the end of June. We're gonna have to carry. Later, probably at the May board meeting. Well, after we approve the school calendar, that's also part of the budget. That'll go in, so Easter is when my budget's due. It's due 8 a.m. the Monday after Easter. So on Sunday, when I submit the budget, it's not gonna include like the salary worksheets and the school calendar. And that's okay. They've assured us that's
Yeah.
fine. But when we get that calendar approved, then that other information will go in. And I'll have a form at that time. We'll wait till the May meeting for y'all to sign, and it's just a signature of approval of budget.
nice.
So that's it. If you have questions, I feel like, I don't know. I get it, but I'm not a good explainer.
Oh, no, you did great, thank you.
But anytime, guys, just stop by and we can try to confuse you.
Right, yeah, no, you did great, thank you.
And then,
And then I just go and ask her multiple times, okay, so what I heard was this, is this, just, if you work next to her, then all of a sudden you get to bother her all day.
sometimes I turn off the light and pretend I'm not there. All right, so that's it. We'll have the action item later on the agenda for approval of the budget so that we can. And once we get those numbers, we'll let you know what it really is, our SEG compared to this year's. But it's still doing,
Maybe tomorrow.
maybe.
There's a lot.
There's some groups that have had due dates today, so we can be thankful that we have a due date next.
They have even less
Monday.
information than we do. They have to submit today.
Yeah.
I'm sure there have to be revisions to those happening quite frequently after you submit in regards to.
And there are many, like our federal allocations, we don't have them. What I will do is go ahead and upload kind of what we have this year. So that when it comes time to revise, I can just go in and change, fix them.
We do not expect an increase on those either. Federal funds.
So with the bilingual program that we lost, right? This year, or we won't have it next year?
We don't have it this year. So therefore, we don't receive funding for next year.
Is that including the indigent fund? Or like how whenever you guys help people that come from out of country to our school and we help them out?
No, that's different. There's federal funding that runs through Loretta's office. That the state bilingual program was part of our
That was where we
state, yeah, part of our SEG. And they have to do with the number of hours they were being served by a license. Like I said, Lorena is much.
She's here behind you. She's looking at
She can explain it much better than I can. But we won't, we don't have it.
We don't have enough, certified, bilingual certified students. So the program was not working the way it's supposed to be working. I am gonna look into a different type of bilingual program but it won't happen until the next.
So
we have to apply for
2027.
it in November and see if they approve it, and then it'll kick in till 26,
because
27.
they go off your previous school year's information. Did you do it then? So you kind of have to self-fund to make it start and then,
So yeah, there's 5 types of bilingual programs, and there's one that doesn't require, it's less hours, so it's not gonna be a lot of funding either, but at least we'll have some type of program.
So what do we do with those kids that are very, with the first language being Spanish or any
So
other
we
language?
have, the ELL program, which is Title III, and, they get servicing, but it's not to learn Spanish, it's to learn.
To help them
English.
English?
And, but the teachers still supplement, those newcomers, they still supplement with, them learning, translating and stuff like that. And then we do after school tutoring. So myself and, there's like 5 other teachers that were
Wow.
teaching the kids English after school.
Do we have the budget with the ELS or, no, which one did you say? That we
ELL
grew
type.
ELL title to have somebody in that classroom with that student?
I don't think we can pay for.
Kind of like how we used to have Miss Luna and
so like the original bilingual, I think that you guys, whichever one you had, it was like a 50-50 program. So any kid who even knew English could be in both programs and they would receive the Spanish, and it was a 50-50 shared time. That's very extensive in regards to the amount of staff it takes to do that. And the staff certification is where it comes to be an issue, is because if you're not certified, then we can't accept that funding basically to do something that we're not actually doing. And that's kind of, I think that's why it
Yeah,
had to
we
stop.
don't have enough, like, so elementary lost, like myself and then, Mr. Andy, and so now there's gaps in elementary. And the program can't work with gaps.
Right.
And we don't want to take funding that we know we're not doing, what the intent is, or then you end up having to pay that back as well.
So yeah, so the next best thing is the after-school tutoring that we're teaching, we're actually teaching the kids English. And I mean, it's going really good right now.
It's awesome.
Our last day will be next, but we've done it.
And
Just-
that's only after school.
It's only after school, yeah. We don't have the funding to pay somebody.
Middle school though, you have a program at middle school for,
So yeah, so middle school is the only one that has the Spanish and the ELL program combined
Okay.
with Mr. Duran.
And high school doesn't, right?
High school is not, I mean, and then elementary, it's just supplemental. If they don't get a full-blown Spanish, to learn Spanish.
Are these kids that their first language is Spanish, do they have to show up for these tutorings in the afternoon, or it's
Well, it's
optional?
optional.
Okay.
We've had a big group and it's dwindled down. But I can say the newcomers, they have been consistent. And it's just the ELL that they fluctuate.
Lorena, do you think that, the number of kids you have based on their age, like if a kid comes in new and they're in like 5th grade, those kids tend to do more, like come in, or because your kindergartners sometimes, they're picking up both really fast because I just was curious.
So we have a group of, so right now we have, the newcomers, we have a group of, K in first grade and K1 and 2. And then I tutor the 3rd through 5th, and then Miss Herrera Teo, she does the middle school, and then Miss Van Horn, tutors the high school.
Oh, okay, so the
And-
kids in hospital.
Yeah, so we have them at each school, and we have a really good program that we purchased with Title III money, to help them learn.
That's good.
Yeah.
Can I make one more comment? I found I should have looked at my notes. Just one more thing. I talked about student travel. Student travel, just one, sometimes this comes up, we charge a mileage rate when we, football uses the bus, and then, of course, it's a district, but still, it's little. We decided we don't need to go up on that this year. Our bus fund is, we have money in there that's paying for the new tires, for the gas and all that, so we're not going to increase that because that affects the whole
It
budget.
basically came out of it was like a savings plan for us. It cost X amount, football's going to somewhere, and we put that money in this transportation account for them.
Kind of treat it as a little, almost a full business, we invoice them, and that way we use a chart of accounts to code how that money is spent.
Yes.
So we're gonna leave it as is, leave it at 45 cents a mile for Suburbans and 80 cents per bus, plus the driver. And
That
that's,
program is not paying for that. We're paying for, operational is paying for it, but it creates an account for maintenance on those buses.
instead of having to charge, if Title I goes on a trip, they don't have to pay whatever the gas bill was, it's just-
Hello.
And then just one other thing I wanted to
How are you?
mention, about, operational, is that, for most of our teacher, a lot of our teacher professional development is able to be funded by federal funds, Title I, things like that. But there are some that we have to fund out of operational. So we just want to have some room in there for things like, every 3 or 4 years, my office will go to the software training, when it's feasible. It's in May. A lot of times it doesn't work for anyone, but sometimes that comes up. We have new IT staff and we're really looking for training, things like that. So that would be paid out of operation. And any kind of like HR training, that's something Title I's not going to pay for. And then even in our transportation fund, I'm hoping, we don't have an allocation, but I'm hoping there'll be room to send a person to the TransFinder training, our new software. So just know there are some kind of trainings that operational funds have to pick up. There's nobody to pay for. We don't know exactly what they might be, but I just wanted to say that so that in case it comes up. And
Nice.
that was everything on my notes. So thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Jen.
job. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you did on that.
Sure.